They slammed her to the ground, laughed as they shaved her head on the street, thinking she was just another nobody. But weeks later, when the same officers walked into court for their misconduct trial, their laughter died instantly, because the judge sitting before them was the very woman they humiliated. The streets buzzed with people, coffee cups in hand, rushing to work. Among them was Naomi Brooks, a well-dressed black woman in a light grey suit, her braided hair neatly tied back. She walked with quiet confidence, her briefcase swinging gently by her side. Nobody knew that in less than 5 minutes this calm street would become the scene of a public humiliation, and later, poetic justice. Naomi had parked her car near the courthouse, where she often volunteered for youth advocacy programs. As she stepped onto the sidewalk, 2 police cruisers screeched to a halt beside her. The doors flew open, and 3 officers emerged: Officer Daniels, Sergeant Clay, and Officer Reese. Their voices boomed across the street. "Hey, you fit the description!" Daniels barked, his hand resting on his holster. Naomi blinked, startled. "Excuse me? Description of what?" But before she could finish, Clay grabbed her arm roughly. "Stop resisting!" he shouted, even though Naomi stood frozen in disbelief. Pedestrians paused, watching the scene unfold. Some pulled out their phones, others covered their mouths in shock. "I haven't done anything," Naomi said calmly, her voice steady though her heart pounded. "You're making a mistake," Reese sneered. "Yeah, that's what they all say." Within seconds she was forced face down on the cold concrete, her briefcase tossed aside. Her carefully arranged braids brushed against the dirty pavement. Pain shot through her shoulders as her hands were wrenched behind her back. People started yelling, "She didn't do anything!" But the officers ignored them. Daniels, grinning, looked around at the growing crowd. "It's just procedure, folks," he said mockingly. Naomi's eyes burned, not just from pain, but humiliation. She could feel the weight of every stare, every whisper. In that moment, she wasn't Naomi Brooks, the respected legal scholar, the woman being considered for a federal judgeship. To them, she was just another black face to dominate. And then came the final blow. Daniels looked at Clay, smirking. "You know what they do in processing? Haircut time." Clay chuckled. "Let's give her a head start." He reached into his patrol bag and pulled out a pair of electric clippers, the sound buzzing through the street like a cruel joke. Naomi's heart sank. "Don't you dare," she whispered. But he didn't listen. In front of dozens of horrified witnesses, they began shaving her hair, each stroke stripping away not just her braids but her dignity. Her long black locks fell onto the sidewalk as cameras rolled. People shouted for them to stop, but none dared step closer. Tears welled in Naomi's eyes, but she refused to cry out. She clenched her jaw and looked up at the mirrored glass of the building beside her, her reflection fragmented by sunlight and shame. She promised herself one thing: they will see me again. After the officers finished, they threw her into the back of the squad car. "It's just procedure, ma'am," Daniels said with a smirk, echoing words that would later haunt him. At the precinct, Naomi was booked under the wrong name. Mistaken identity, they said. Hours later, after her ID was finally checked, a red-faced supervisor rushed in, apologizing profusely. "You're free to go, Ms. Brooks. There's been a terrible error." Naomi didn't speak. She simply stood up, straightened her torn blouse, and looked each officer in the eye before walking out in silence. But inside, something had changed. The humiliation had burned a permanent scar. That night, she stood in front of her mirror at home, staring at the uneven patches of her shaved head. She didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her mother, an elderly woman with a soft voice, came into the room. "Baby, don't let this break you," she whispered. "Let it crown you instead." Those words settled deep in Naomi's soul. Over the next few days, she disappeared from public view. Her law firm handled press inquiries while she quietly filed a civil rights complaint. The video of her arrest, however, had already gone viral. Millions watched in outrage. Protesters flooded the streets demanding justice. But Naomi wasn't interested in pity. She was interested in accountability. Behind closed doors, she began building a case. She documented every second of the encounter, every word spoken, every witness. What the officers didn't know was that Naomi wasn't just a victim. She was a woman deeply rooted in the law. By the following month, the internal affairs investigation had begun. Daniels, Clay, and Reese were suspended pending trial, and as fate would have it, the district court announced a new appointment for the federal bench. One that shocked everyone in the Justice Department. Naomi Brooks had been confirmed as the newest federal judge. When the news broke, whispers spread through the legal world. Some said it was poetic justice. Others said it was destiny. But Naomi said nothing. She waited patiently, her calm demeanor hiding the storm beneath, because she knew the day was coming when those same officers would walk into her courtroom, expecting leniency, unaware that the woman they once humiliated now held the gavel that would decide their fate. 3 months later, the federal courthouse in downtown Baltimore buzzed with anticipation. Reporters filled the marble hallways, cameras flashing, microphones poised. The case of State versus Daniels, Clay, and Reese had gripped the nation. The world had seen the video. 3 officers forcing a black woman to the ground, mocking her as they shaved her hair. What the public didn't know was the identity of the presiding judge. Inside courtroom 4B, tension crackled like static electricity. The defense team whispered among themselves while the officers sat stiffly at the defendant's table. Daniels fidgeted with his tie, sweat forming on his forehead. "Relax," his lawyer muttered. "The judge will be just another bureaucrat. We'll get through this." The bailiff's voice boomed. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Naomi Brooks presiding." For a moment, silence consumed the room. Every head turned toward the chamber doors. And there she was. Naomi walked in, poised, radiant, her short, regrown hair styled elegantly, her black robe flowing behind her like a shadow of authority. The same street they had humiliated her on now trembled under her authority. Daniel's jaw fell open. Clay's face went pale. Reese swallowed hard, his bravado dissolving. Naomi took her seat at the bench, glancing over the courtroom. Her eyes met theirs, calm, unreadable, but sharp as a blade. "You may be seated," she said, her voice steady and commanding. The defense attorney stammered. "Your Honor, with all due respect, we weren't informed." Naomi cut him off gently. "Is there an issue, counselor?" He hesitated. "It's just the nature of this case, I assure you," she replied. "Justice is blind, even when memory isn't," the courtroom murmured. Naomi adjusted her glasses and began. "The defendants stand charged with unlawful use of force, public humiliation, and violation of civil rights. You will be judged not by emotion but by evidence. Let the truth speak for itself." Daniels couldn't look up. His hands trembled. He remembered her on the ground, pleading, humiliated, her voice calm but defiant. Now that same voice echoed from the bench above him. The prosecution began their opening statement, projecting footage onto the large monitor. The room went silent as the video played. Naomi's arrest, the officers' laughter, the buzzing of the clippers. The collective gasp from the courtroom hit like a wave. "Your Honor," the prosecutor said, turning to Naomi, "the evidence will show a clear abuse of power, an act of cruelty, and a violation of human rights." Naomi nodded, her face expressionless. But inside, memories replayed with painful clarity, the concrete against her cheek, the laughter, the fear. Yet she reminded herself, "You are not that woman anymore. You are the law now." The defense tried to twist the narrative. Our clients acted under mistaken identity. They believed they were detaining a suspect matching an active warrant description. There was no intent to humiliate. Naomi's gavel struck once. "Intent does not erase impact, counselor," she said. Her tone was firm but measured. "Continue." Each witness testified. The bystanders who filmed, the officer who tried to intervene but was silenced by superiors, the department chief who admitted that the procedure was entirely unauthorized. Every statement peeled away another layer of corruption. As the hours passed, Naomi maintained professional composure, but her mind occasionally drifted. She remembered her mother's voice. "Don't let this break you, let it crown you." She realized now what that meant. Her pain had become her power. By the afternoon recess, the courtroom was electric. Reporters whispered, "Did you see her face when she walked in?" Others murmured, "This is history in the making." Outside, protesters held signs reading "Justice for Naomi" and "Accountability for all." Inside, the officers sat hunched, visibly deflated. Their arrogance had melted into regret. When the session resumed, Naomi spoke directly to the defendants for the first time. Her tone was calm, but carried an undercurrent of controlled fire. "Officer Daniels, Sergeant Clay, Officer Reese," she began, "do you understand the weight of your actions that day?" Daniels finally looked up, eyes red. "Your Honor, we didn't know. You thought I was beneath you," Naomi interrupted softly. "You thought you could strip me of dignity because of my color, my gender, or simply because you had the badge, am I correct?" Daniels' lips quivered. "We were just following protocol," Naomi leaned forward. Protocol does not include humiliation. Procedure does not justify cruelty. The courtroom fell utterly silent. Even the hum of the air conditioning seemed to stop. Naomi's gaze softened, though her words cut deep. Justice is not vengeance. This court is not a stage for anger. It is a temple of truth. You will have every right to defend yourselves, but know this: the law you mocked will now speak louder than your excuses. With that, she struck her gavel. Court adjourned until tomorrow morning. As the officers were escorted out, Daniels glanced back one last time. Naomi's eyes met his, calm, unwavering, almost sorrowful. It was the look of someone who had already forgiven but would never forget. Outside, cameras flashed wildly as the story spread like wildfire. Headlines screamed across the internet. Officers who humiliated black woman face trial. Judge revealed to be their victim. Naomi exited quietly through the side door, avoiding the chaos. As she stepped into her car, she finally allowed herself a deep breath. Justice was beginning. Not just for her, but for every woman who had ever been silenced. Every black person who had ever been dehumanized. The next day would decide their fate. And Naomi Brooks was ready. The next morning, courtroom 4B was filled beyond capacity. Word had spread nationwide. The officers who humiliated a woman on the street were being tried before the very same woman, now a federal judge. Television vans lined the block, reporters live-streaming every update. Inside, the atmosphere was heavy. Everyone knew this day would reveal what kind of men those officers truly were. Naomi Brooks entered the courtroom with the same quiet authority as before, her robe flowing gracefully behind her. She looked serene, but her eyes carried the wisdom of a woman who had suffered and survived. When the bailiff announced her arrival, the crowd rose as one. "All rise! The Honorable Judge Naomi Brooks presiding." She nodded gently. "Be seated." The trial resumed. The prosecutor, a young woman named Tanya Alvarez, stood tall. "Your Honor, the prosecution would like to recall Officer Daniels to the stand." Daniels looked hesitant. He had spent the night replaying the incident in his mind, her face on the ground, the sound of laughter, the camera flashes, and his own voice taunting, "It's just procedure, ma'am." That phrase had haunted him in every dream since. As he took the stand, Naomi watched him closely. Her face revealed nothing. No anger, no pity, just truth. "Officer Daniels," Tanya began, "you've testified that this was a case of mistaken identity, correct?" "Yes," he said softly. "And you maintain that you followed proper police protocol?" He hesitated. "At the time, I believed I did." "Then why," Tanya asked, stepping closer, "did you proceed to shave a civilian's hair on a public street? Is that part of standard arrest procedure?" Daniel's mouth opened, then closed. The room waited. He looked at Naomi, her calm eyes, her silent authority, and suddenly his defenses crumbled. "No," he whispered. "It's not." Tanya's tone hardened. "So what was it then, officer? Why did you do it?" Daniels swallowed. Because we wanted to make an example of her. People were filming. She was too calm. It made us look weak. So Clay said we'd show her who's in charge. I went along with it." Gasps echoed around the courtroom. Clay's face turned red, his lawyer whispering furiously, but Daniels kept going. "I didn't know who she was, but that shouldn't have mattered. It was wrong. We humiliated her for no reason, for fun." His voice cracked. "And the worst part is, she didn't even fight back. She just looked at us like she was already above it." Tanya stepped back, stunned by his honesty. "No further questions, Your Honor." Naomi nodded, her expression unchanged. "Defense, you may cross-examine." The defense attorney stood, visibly shaken. "Officer Daniels, are you claiming my client, Sergeant Clay, ordered you to act?" Daniels shook his head. "No, sir. We all participated. No one stopped it. Not even me. I take full responsibility for my actions." The attorney sat down, defeated. Naomi leaned forward slightly, her voice steady. "Officer Daniels," he looked up trembling. "When you were on duty that day," she asked, "did you believe that authority gave you permission to degrade another human being?" Daniels wiped his eyes. "No, Your Honor." "And now?" He met her gaze, tears streaming down his face. "Now I know authority means responsibility, not domination." Naomi let the silence stretch. Then she said softly, "Thank you, Officer Daniels. You may step down." As he left the stand, the room buzzed. People weren't just watching a trial anymore. They were watching transformation, guilt evolving into understanding. Next came Sergeant Clay, the man who had held the clippers that day. He was defiant, his jaw tight, his uniform crisp even without the badge he once wore. "Sergeant Clay," Tanya began. "You were the supervising officer. Why did you allow this to happen?" Clay crossed his arms. "I didn't allow anything. I followed orders from the precinct. Orders to humiliate a woman publicly?" Tanya shot back. He hesitated. "We were told to assert control in public encounters. Keep things from escalating." Tanya raised a brow. "By shaving her head?" Clay shifted. It was impulsive. A moment of poor judgment. Naomi's gavel tapped lightly. "Sergeant Clay, the court reminds you that dishonesty under oath will only deepen your guilt. This is your opportunity to tell the truth, the whole truth." For the first time, Clay's eyes met hers. He froze. The memory of her eyes that day, calm, defiant, unbroken, came flooding back. His arrogance melted. He exhaled. "I wanted to prove a point. She challenged me, not by words, but by not breaking. I thought shaving her head would break her spirit." His voice faltered. "But it didn't. She just kept looking at me, like I was the one losing control." The courtroom was silent. Naomi nodded once. "At least now you understand what control truly means." By the time Officer Reese was called, the truth had already unraveled. He broke down almost immediately, admitting to holding Naomi down and laughing while the crowd watched. When the confessions ended, Naomi sat quietly, absorbing every word. She wasn't angry, she wasn't even sad. She was simply resolved. The truth had finally been spoken aloud, in her courtroom, before her gavel. As she prepared to adjourn, she addressed the room. "What we witness today is more than justice, it is revelation. True justice does not erase pain, but it exposes truth. And in that, there is healing." She paused, her voice soft but resonant. "For years, people of color have been told to respect authority that doesn't always respect them. But justice does not wear a color, it wears conscience, and today conscience has spoken." Her gavel struck once, echoing through the hall. "Court is adjourned until sentencing." As everyone rose, the reporters whispered that this was no longer just a trial, it was history being written. Outside, Naomi stepped into the cold evening air. The sun was setting over the courthouse, its golden light bathing her in a quiet glow. She took a deep breath, her reflection shimmering in the glass doors. For the first time since that terrible day, she felt peace. The final day of the trial arrived under a somber sky. Rain clouds loomed above the courthouse, as if the heavens themselves waited for judgment to fall. Inside, the air was electric. Every seat in courtroom 4B was filled, the corridors packed with journalists, law students, and ordinary citizens who had followed every moment of this extraordinary case. The officers sat at the defense table, pale and exhausted. Their uniforms were long gone, replaced by plain suits that no longer carried the power they once abused. Naomi Brooks entered with the same quiet grace that had defined her throughout the trial. But this time, something different shone in her eyes, the calm of completion. She took her seat, and the room rose to its feet. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Naomi Brooks." When everyone sat down, Naomi looked out across the courtroom. "Before I deliver sentencing," she began softly, "I want to remind everyone present that this courtroom is not built on vengeance. It is built on principle, the belief that justice must restore balance, not destroy it." She turned her gaze to the defendants. "Officers Daniels, Clay, and Reese, please stand." The three men rose slowly. Daniels' eyes were downcast, Clay's jaw tight, and Reese clutched the edge of the table for support. Naomi continued. "Over the course of this trial, this court has heard testimony that exposed not just individual misconduct, but the moral decay that occurs when authority is used without humanity. You acted not in the name of law, but in the name of ego. You humiliated a woman, not because you had to, but because you could." A heavy silence followed. The gallery hung on every word. "But in this courtroom," Naomi said, her voice steady, "the truth reclaimed its place." She paused, remembering the cold pavement, the buzzing clippers, the cameras capturing her humiliation. She remembered her mother's voice. "Don't let this break you, let it crown you." And she realized that was exactly what had happened. "Officer Daniels," she said, turning to the first defendant, "your testimony showed genuine remorse. You faced the truth and acknowledged your wrongdoing. The court recognizes that courage. You are sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for abuse of authority, and you will serve an additional 2 years of community service, specifically in rehabilitation programs for officers dealing with racial bias. Redemption begins with accountability." Daniels nodded slowly, tears in his eyes. "Thank you, Your Honor." Naomi's gaze shifted to Clay. "Sergeant Clay," she said, her tone colder. "You led this cruelty, you held the clippers, you initiated humiliation in public view, you turned your badge into a weapon of shame. For that, this court sentences you to 8 years in federal prison with no parole, followed by mandatory participation in the Department of Justice's misconduct reform program." Clay's composure cracked. His head dropped as officers moved closer to escort him. Finally, Naomi turned to Reese. "Officer Reese, your actions, though following orders, showed no resistance to wrongdoing. You laughed, you held me down, and you chose silence over integrity. You are sentenced to 5 years in federal prison, with eligibility for parole after 3 years contingent on good behavior and demonstrated reform." She paused. "May you all learn that power without compassion is not protection. It is poison." The gavel struck once, sharp and final. The courtroom erupted into a storm of emotions, gasps, applause, and tears. Reporters typed furiously, cameras flashed, history had just been made. But Naomi didn't bask in the moment. She simply removed her glasses and exhaled slowly, the weight of months, perhaps years, lifting from her shoulders. Tanya Alvarez, the prosecutor, approached the bench after adjournment. "Your Honor," she said softly, "you've just changed the meaning of justice for an entire generation." Naomi smiled faintly. "Justice changes nothing unless hearts do. Let's hope theirs will." As the officers were led away, Daniels turned back one last time. His voice broke. "I'm sorry, Your Honor, truly." Naomi met his eyes and nodded. "Then make your life the apology." Outside the courthouse, rain began to fall. Crowds gathered under umbrellas, cheering, chanting her name, holding signs that read, "Justice wears no color," and she rose from the pavement to the bench. Naomi stepped outside, the cool rain kissing her skin. Reporters surged forward, microphones raised. "Judge Brooks, how does it feel to finally get justice?" one shouted. She stopped at the top of the courthouse steps, her black robe glistening under the rain. "Justice isn't something you get," she said, her voice calm but powerful. "It's something we build, every time we choose integrity over hate." Her words silenced the crowd for a moment, then the applause erupted again, echoing through the city streets. Naomi descended the steps slowly, each footstep echoing like the heartbeat of justice itself. Her mother waited near a black car, holding an umbrella. Naomi smiled as she approached. "I told you, baby," her mother said softly. "God doesn't let storms drown his daughters. He lets them walk on the rain." Naomi smiled, looking up at the grey sky. "You were right, Mama." As they got into the car, the rain intensified, washing away the last traces of pain, leaving only peace. Naomi glanced out the window one last time at the courthouse, her reflection merging with its towering columns. In that reflection, she didn't see the woman who was forced to the ground. She didn't see the victim. She saw the judge, the woman who stood back up, faced her oppressors, and turned humiliation into history. And as the car drove away through the rain, Naomi whispered to herself, "Justice served."